The stars had been peaceful for over 3,000 years. Across the galaxy, hundreds of different alien species lived together in harmony. They called themselves the Galactic Confederation, and they had built something beautiful among the stars. The aliens in the Confederation were gentle creatures. Most of them ate only plants or small creatures that did not fight back. They had learned long ago that war was stupid and wasteful. Instead of fighting, they talked through their problems. Instead of weapons, they built schools and hospitals. Their spaceships were works of art, with smooth curves and bright colors that looked like flying jewels. Elder Kethamira was one of the leaders of this peaceful galaxy. She belonged to a race called the Altarians, who looked like tall, thin people with 4 arms and skin that changed color with their emotions. Right now, her skin was a worried shade of deep purple as she stood in the great meeting hall on the capital world. The hall was enormous, with a dome made of clear crystal that showed the stars above. Representatives from 200 different worlds sat in floating chairs that moved gently through the air. Some looked like giant butterflies, others like walking trees, and some like creatures from the deepest oceans of ancient worlds. But today, none of them were admiring the beautiful architecture. They were all staring at the huge screen that showed a map of their galaxy. Red dots marked the places where worlds had died. 17 systems, Elder Kethamira said, her voice echoing through the silent hall. 17 entire star systems completely destroyed. Over 40 billion lives gone. The alien representatives made sounds of grief in dozens of different languages. Some whistled sadly. Others hummed low notes that vibrated through the floor, and a few simply changed colors to show their sorrow. The enemy had appeared 6 months ago from the empty space between galaxies. They called themselves the Void Reapers, though the Confederation had learned this name from the few survivors who had escaped their attacks. The Reapers did not talk or negotiate. They simply arrived at a world, surrounded it with their black ships, and began tearing it apart. The Reapers were not like any life form the Confederation had ever seen. They were made of something like living metal and crystal, and they ate entire planets. They would land on a world and begin digging, sending everything they found back to their ships. Within days, a green world full of life would become a gray rock floating in space. "We have tried everything," said Ambassador Zelen, a creature that looked like a large, friendly whale with 6 fins. "We sent our best diplomats to talk with them. They destroyed the diplomatic ship without even responding to our messages. We offered them trade agreements," added Representative Fila, who resembled a walking flower with dozens of colorful petals. "We offered them empty worlds to mine, resources they could take without harming anyone. They ignored all of our offers." Elder Kethamira's skin shifted to a darker purple. "Our military forces engaged them at the Altair system 3 weeks ago. We lost every ship." This caused another wave of sad sounds from the assembly. The Confederation did have warships, but they were not built for real fighting. Most of their weapons were designed to disable other ships without killing anyone. Their shields were meant to protect against accidents, not deliberate attacks. When they met the Reapers' black ships with their terrible weapons, the Confederation fleet had lasted less than an hour. "The Reapers are moving toward the core worlds," Elder Kethamira continued. "At their current speed, they will reach our most populated systems within 4 months. We estimate they will have consumed half the galaxy within 2 years." The hall fell completely silent. Even the gentle humming and whistling stopped. Every representative was thinking the same terrible thought. Their peaceful civilization was going to die. "There is one option we have not discussed," Elder Kethamira said slowly. Her skin began to shift between purple and a sickly yellow color. "One group we could ask for help." Representative Fila's petals closed slightly. "You cannot mean the humans," Elder Kethamira said. "The Deathworlders of the Sol system." The reaction was immediate and loud. Aliens throughout the hall made sounds of fear and disgust. Some representatives actually flew or floated away from the center of the room, as if just talking about humans was dangerous. The human problem had been discovered 300 years ago when the Confederation first found Earth. The planet had seemed normal from space, with blue oceans and green continents. But when they sent down exploration teams, they made a horrifying discovery. Earth was what scientists called a Class 12 death world. It was the most dangerous planet anyone had ever found. The gravity was twice as strong as most civilized worlds. The atmosphere had violent storms that could destroy entire cities. Massive predators roamed the land, sea, and air, all fighting each other in an endless battle for survival. And somehow, intelligent life had evolved there. The humans were the only known species to develop civilization on such a deadly world. They were the only intelligent creatures who had learned to hunt and kill other predators for food. They had something called warfare, which involved organized groups of humans trying to kill other groups of humans for various reasons. When the Confederation tried to make contact, they quickly realized that humans were simply too dangerous to integrate into peaceful galactic society. The human government had been polite but had shown them recordings of their military history. The aliens who watched these recordings had needed months of therapy to recover. From seeing such organized violence, the decision had been made to quarantine the Sol system. Humans were given basic space technology and told to stay in their own area of the galaxy. For 3 centuries, this arrangement had worked perfectly. The humans stayed home and everyone else tried to forget they existed. "We cannot ask the Deathworlders for help," said Ambassador Zelen, his voice shaking with fear. "They are monsters. They wage war for sport. They eat other predators. Their entire planet is a nightmare of death and violence." "And yet," Elder Kethamira replied, "they are the only species in the galaxy that knows how to fight." This statement hung in the air like a bad smell. Every representative knew it was true, but none of them wanted to admit it. "What would we even offer them?" asked Representative Fila. "What could Deathworlders possibly want from us?" Elder Kethamira pulled up another display showing the Reaper advance. "The Reapers will not stop with us. They will consume the entire galaxy, including Earth. The humans must know this. Perhaps they will help us to save themselves." The debate went on for hours. Many representatives argued that it would be better to die with dignity than to ask monsters for help. Others worried that humans might be even worse than the Reapers. At least the Reapers only destroyed worlds for resources. Humans might destroy them just because they enjoyed fighting. But as the debate continued, more reports came in. The Reapers had finished consuming the industrial world of Kepler's Hope. They were moving toward the heavily populated Vega system. Time was running out. Finally, Elder Kethamira called for a vote. All those in favor of requesting military assistance from the human Deathworlders? The vote was close, very close, but fear of extinction won over fear of humans by just 3 votes. Elder Kethamira's skin turned a pale, sick green as she announced the result. "The motion passes. May the ancestors forgive us for what we are about to unleash." The message was prepared carefully. It was translated into the simple, brutal language that humans used and loaded onto the fastest ship in the Confederation fleet. The ship jumped to hyperspace and began the long journey to the Sol system. The message was short. "We need your help. We will pay any price." As the ship disappeared into the void between stars, Elder Kethamira wondered if they had just saved their civilization or doomed it to something even worse than extinction. In the dark space beyond the galaxy, the Void Reapers continued their slow, patient advance toward the core worlds, unaware that their prey had just called upon the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The hunt was about to begin. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, the largest military base orbiting Earth's moon. The room was dark except for the blue glow of dozens of computer screens showing star maps, ship locations, and combat readiness reports. Through the large windows, she could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and white marble, beautiful and deadly. Chen was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Scars crossed her hands from the colonial wars, and a thin line ran along her jaw from a pirate raid in the outer belt. She wore the dark blue uniform of the Terran Space Force, with 4 silver stars on her collar showing her rank as Fleet Admiral. Around her, the other military leaders of Earth waited in tense silence. General Marcus Torres commanded the Space Marines, the elite soldiers who fought in the vacuum of space and on alien worlds. His thick arms were crossed over his chest and his dark eyes never stopped moving, always watching for threats. Colonel Elizabeth Harper led the Orbital Defense Corps, the pilots who flew the fast attack ships that protected Earth's space. She was tall and thin, with the pale skin of someone who spent most of her time in spacecraft. Her fingers drummed nervously on the table as she waited. Dr. James Wright was the only civilian in the room, but his presence was just as important as any general. He was the head of Alien Affairs, the small department that had been watching the galaxy beyond Earth's borders for 3 centuries. His job was to understand the other species in the galaxy, the ones who thought humans were too dangerous to live near. The alien message had arrived 6 hours ago. Dr. Wright had been the first to read it, and he had immediately called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Now he stood at the front of the room, holding a small data pad with the translated message. "Read it again," Admiral Chen ordered. Dr. Wright cleared his throat and began to read in his careful, scientific voice. Message begins. To the human military forces of the Sol system. The Galactic Confederation formally requests military assistance against an existential threat to all galactic civilization. An aggressive species known as the Void Reapers has begun systematic destruction of inhabited worlds. 17 systems have been completely destroyed. All diplomatic and military efforts have failed. We need your help. We will pay any price. Message ends. General Torres made a sound that was half laugh, half growl. After 300 years of treating us like rabid animals, now they want our help. The hypocrisy is impressive, Colonel Harper added. They quarantine us because we're too violent, then come running when they need someone to do violence for them. Admiral Chen held up her hand for silence. She had been studying the star charts on the main screen, tracking the pattern of destroyed worlds. Dr. Wright, what do we know about these Void Reapers? Dr. Wright touched his data pad, and the main screen changed to show grainy images captured by long-range sensors. The images showed massive black ships, sleek and angular like flying daggers. They appeared from outside the galaxy 6 months ago. Based on sensor data, their ships are approximately twice the size of our largest battleships. They're made of some kind of metal we've never seen before. What about their weapons? Asked General Torres. Unknown but effective, Dr. Wright replied. They destroyed a Confederation fleet of 200 ships in less than an hour. The aliens never even got close enough to cause serious damage. Admiral Chen frowned. The Confederation had never been much of a military threat to Earth, but they weren't completely helpless. Their ships were well built, even if they weren't designed for real warfare. If these Reapers could destroy them so easily, they were definitely dangerous. What do they want? Colonel Harper asked. The Reapers, I mean. Are they trying to conquer the galaxy? No, Dr. Wright said, his voice becoming grim. They're eating it. Our sensors show that every world they attack is completely stripped of all resources. They're not leaving anything behind. Every planet they visit becomes a dead rock. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Earth had dealt with alien threats before, but they had always been political or territorial conflicts. This was something else entirely. This was extinction on a galactic scale. Admiral Chen walked to the large star map that covered one wall of the command center. She traced the path of destroyed worlds with her finger, studying the pattern. At their current rate of advance, how long before they reach Sol? Dr. Wright consulted his datapad. If they continue destroying systems at the same speed, and if they follow the most direct path through populated space, they would reach our outer colonies in approximately 15 years. 15 years to prepare, General Torres mused. That's not much time to build defenses against something that can destroy entire fleets. It might not matter, Colonel Harper pointed out. If they consume the entire galaxy, we'll be surrounded, cut off from any possible allies or resources. Admiral Chen continued to stare at the star map. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for threats to Earth and its colonies. The colonial wars had taught her that space was full of dangers, and that only the strong survived. But this was bigger than anything she had ever faced. What do the politicians want us to do? She asked. Dr. Wright grimaced. The president is meeting with Congress now. Early reports suggest they're divided. Some want to help the Confederation, others think we should stay out of galactic politics. And if we ignore this? Admiral Chen asked. If we let the Reapers consume the galaxy and just try to defend Earth? We'd be facing them alone, Dr. Wright said quietly. No allies, no advance warning of their tactics, no chance to study their weaknesses by watching them fight someone else. General Torres cracked his knuckles, a habit that would have terrified most aliens. What's our current military strength? Colonel Harper consulted her own datapad. Active fleet, 400 combat vessels ranging from destroyers to dreadnoughts. Marine forces, 2 million active personnel with another 8 million in reserves. Orbital defenses around Earth and the colonies are at maximum strength. Industrial capacity? Admiral Chen asked. The Mars shipyards can produce 50 new warships per month if we go to full war production, Colonel Harper replied. The belt mining operations can provide all the raw materials we need. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. Earth's military was smaller than the Confederation's had been, but it was built for real warfare. Every human ship carried weapons designed to destroy other ships quickly and efficiently. Every Marine was trained to fight and kill in the harsh environment of space. Humans didn't build their military for show or for defense against accidents. They built it to win wars. There's another factor to consider, Dr. Wright said carefully. If we help the Confederation and we win, our position in the galaxy would change dramatically. We'd go from being quarantined Deathworlders to being the species that saved galactic civilization. And if we lose, General Torres asked, then it won't matter what anyone thinks of us, Admiral Chen replied. We'll all be dead. The Admiral walked back to her command chair and sat down heavily. She had made many difficult decisions in her career, but this one would affect not just Earth but the entire galaxy. Around her, the other military leaders waited for her choice. Dr. Wright, she said finally, send a message to the President. Tell him the Defense Council recommends immediate military intervention. These Reapers represent a clear threat to Earth's long-term survival, and we have a better chance of defeating them with allies than alone. And the Confederation? Dr. Wright asked. Admiral Chen's eyes went cold, the look of a predator making a decision. Send them a reply. Tell them that Earth accepts their request for military assistance, but also tell them that human military operations follow different rules than they're used to. We don't fight to disable or capture. We fight to win, no matter the cost. She paused, thinking about what the peaceful aliens were about to see. And tell them to evacuate all civilian populations from any world where fighting might occur. When humans go to war, it's not safe for anyone to be nearby. As Dr. Wright hurried to send the messages, Admiral Chen turned to General Torres and Colonel Harper. Start mobilization immediately. I want every ship checked and ready for combat. Begin awakening personnel from long-term cryosleep. Contact the industrial councils and tell them to begin full war production. How big a force are we sending? General Torres asked. Admiral Chen looked back at the star map, at the red dots marking dead worlds and the projected path of destruction heading toward Earth. All of it, she said quietly. We're sending everything we have. Outside the windows of Luna Station, the industrial platforms around Earth began to glow with increased activity as the human war machine awakened from its long peace. The human fleet that arrived at the Confederation staging area was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. 200 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that had no purpose except to destroy other ships. At the center of the formation was the UES Indomitable, Admiral Chen's flagship. The massive dreadnought was 2 kilometers long and built like a flying fortress. Its hull was dark gray metal scarred by laser burns and projectile impacts from a dozen previous wars. Unlike the smooth artistic curves of Confederation ships, the Indomitable was all angles and armor plating, designed by people who expected to be shot at. Surrounding the flagship were cruisers and destroyers that moved through space like hunting wolves. Their sensor arrays swept constantly for threats, and their weapon systems tracked anything that moved. Behind them came the support ships, carriers full of fighters, transports loaded with Marines, and supply vessels carrying enough ammunition to fight a war. On the observation deck of the Confederation command station, Elder Kathamira watched the human fleet with growing horror. Each ship looked like it could destroy her entire homeworld single-handedly. But it wasn't just the ships that frightened her. It was what they represented. These were the vessels of a species that had learned to fight among the stars while her people were still trying to figure out how to grow crops without harming the soil. Humans had built these machines of war while the Confederation was building libraries and art galleries. The difference was so vast that it made her feel sick. "Elder," said her assistant, a young Altarian whose skin had turned white with fear. "The human admiral is requesting permission to dock and meet with our leadership." Kathamira's own skin shifted to a nervous yellow. "Grant permission, but have medical teams standing by, and clear all non-essential personnel from the docking bay." The human shuttle that docked at the station was small compared to their warships, but it was still built like a weapon. Its hull was covered in sensor equipment and what looked like small defensive guns. When the airlock opened, the first humans to emerge were soldiers. The Marines wore powered armor that made them look like mechanical monsters. Each suit was over 2 meters tall and covered in black metal plates. Their helmets had glowing red visors that scanned everything around them. They carried weapons that looked capable of cutting through the station's bulkheads. Behind the Marines came the human officers. Even without armor, they were terrifying in their own way. Admiral Chen was smaller than most of the aliens she met, but she moved with the careful grace of a predator. Her uniform was dark and simple, with no decoration except small silver stars and patches that marked battles her people had fought. Captain Yuki Tanaka, commander of the Indomitable, walked beside the admiral. She was a compact woman with cybernetic implants replacing her left arm and eye. The metal parts of her body gleamed under the station's lights, and her remaining human eye was the cold gray of winter storms. But it was Colonel Rex Harrison who truly made the aliens want to flee. The Marine commander was huge even by human standards, with broad shoulders and arms like tree trunks. His face was marked by old scars, and his smile showed teeth that were too white and too sharp. When he looked at the assembled aliens, several of them actually stepped backward. Elder Kethamira forced herself to approach the human delegation, though every instinct told her to run. "Admiral Chen," she said, her voice barely steady. "Welcome to Serenitas Prime. The Confederation is grateful for your assistance." Admiral Chen nodded politely. "Elder Kethamira, thank you for the welcome. My staff and I are ready to begin planning our response to the Reaper threat." "Of course," Kethamira replied. "We have prepared a full briefing on everything we know about their capabilities and tactics." The briefing took place in the station's largest conference room. The human officers sat on one side of the table, while Confederation representatives filled the other side. Between them, holographic displays showed star maps, ship designs, and battle recordings. Ambassador Zelen, the whale-like creature who served as the Confederation's military advisor, began the presentation. "The Void Reapers first appeared 6 months ago at the edge of our territory. Their ships are approximately twice the size of our largest vessels, and they appear to be constructed from an unknown metal crystal composite." Captain Tanaka leaned forward to study the holographic images. "What about their weapons?" "Unknown," Zelen admitted. "They destroy our ships so quickly that we haven't been able to analyze their weapon systems. We believe they use some form of directed energy beam, but we're not certain." Colonel Harrison spoke for the first time, his voice a low rumble that made several aliens flinch. "Show us the battle recordings." What followed was a series of holographic replays showing Confederation fleets being destroyed by the Reapers. The alien ships moved in careful formations, trying to stay at long range and use their superior numbers. But the Reapers simply charged through them, their weapons cutting through shields and armor like they weren't there. "Your ships retreat when they take damage," Admiral Chen observed. "Well, yes," said Representative Fila, her flower-like petals closing slightly. "We don't want to lose valuable crew members unnecessarily. And when your weapons prove ineffective, you withdraw to regroup," Captain Tanaka added. "That's the logical response," Ambassador Zelen said defensively. "Staying to fight a losing battle would be wasteful." The humans exchanged glances that the aliens couldn't interpret. Finally, Colonel Harrison spoke again. "You've never fought a real war, have you?" The question hung in the air like an insult. Elder Kethamira felt her skin flush with anger. "We are a civilized people, Colonel. We resolve our differences through negotiation and compromise." "That's not what I asked," Harrison replied calmly. "I asked if you've ever fought a war where the goal was to completely destroy your enemy." "We don't have wars," Representative Fila said with obvious pride. "We haven't had a major conflict in over 2,000 years. Admiral Chen stood up and walked to the star map showing the Reaper advance. "That's your problem. You're not fighting a war. You're playing a game where you think everyone follows the same rules." She pointed to the line of destroyed worlds. "The Reapers aren't playing your game. They don't want to negotiate or compromise. They want to eat your entire civilization, and they'll keep doing it until someone stops them permanently." "Surely there must be some way to reason with them," Elder Kethamira said desperately. "Every intelligent species can be communicated with." Colonel Harrison pulled up his own holographic display, showing recordings from human military history. The aliens watched in growing horror as human soldiers fought brutal battles across airless moons and burning planets. They saw humans continuing to fight even when their ships were crippled, even when they were outnumbered, even when they were dying. "This is how humans fight," Harrison said simply. "We don't retreat when things get difficult. We don't withdraw to regroup. When we go into battle, we go to win, no matter what it costs. One of the recordings showed human Marines boarding an enemy ship through a hole blown in its hull. The soldiers fought room by room through corridors filled with smoke and fire, never giving ground, never stopping their advance until every enemy was dead. "This is barbaric," whispered Ambassador Zelen. "How can you be so violent?" Captain Tanaka's cybernetic eye gleamed as she smiled. "Because our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to fight or we died. Earth doesn't produce diplomats, Ambassador. It produces survivors." Admiral Chen returned to her seat. "Here's what's going to happen. My fleet will engage the Reapers using human military doctrine. We'll study their tactics by fighting them, not by running away when they prove dangerous. We'll adapt our strategy based on what works, not on what seems civilized. But the casualties," Elder Kethmira protested. "If you fight them directly, you'll lose so many people." "Yes, we will," Admiral Chen agreed. "But we'll keep fighting anyway because that's what it takes to win. The question is, are you prepared for what human warfare actually looks like?" The room fell silent. The aliens stared at the humans with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. They had asked for help from the Deathworlders, and now they were beginning to understand what that really meant. "We need time to discuss this," Elder Kethmira said finally. "You don't have time," Colonel Harrison replied. "The Reapers will reach the Vega system in 3 weeks. We can intercept them there, but only if we move immediately." Admiral Chen stood up. "I'll give you 6 hours to decide. After that, my fleet moves to engage the enemy with or without your official approval. We didn't come here to debate. We came here to fight." As the humans left the conference room, Elder Kethmira realized that her people had made a choice they couldn't take back. They had called upon monsters to save them from other monsters. Now they would discover whether the cure was worse than the disease. The Battle of Kepler's Rest began at 1430 Galactic Standard Time on a Tuesday that would be remembered across the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. It was the day the universe learned what happened when humans went to war. The Void Reapers had consumed the mining world of Kepler's Hope just 2 days earlier, leaving behind nothing but a ball of gray rock floating in space. Now their fleet of 60 massive black ships was moving toward Kepler's Rest, a heavily populated world with over 3 billion inhabitants. The evacuation had been going on for days, with every available Confederation transport ship ferrying people to safety, but there simply wasn't enough time to save everyone. When the human fleet arrived to intercept the Reapers, nearly 1 billion people were still on the planet below. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display as her ships moved into formation. The human fleet looked tiny compared to the approaching Reapers. Each enemy vessel was twice the size of her largest ship, and they outnumbered her forces 3-1. "Final weapons check complete," reported Lieutenant Commander Singh from the weapons station. "All gun batteries loaded and ready. Nuclear torpedoes armed and targeted. Defensive systems online," added Commander Park at the defensive station. "Armor plating is at maximum strength. Point defense systems are active." Captain Tanaka walked up beside the Admiral, her cybernetic arm gleaming under the bridge lights. "The Marines are ready for boarding operations if you give the order." Admiral Chen nodded. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. These were people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. They showed no fear, only the focused concentration of professional killers preparing to do their job. "Open a channel to all ships," Admiral Chen ordered. "Channel open," replied the communications officer. Admiral Chen's voice echoed through every human ship in the fleet. "This is Admiral Chen to all vessels. Today we face an enemy that has destroyed 17 worlds and killed over 40 billion innocent people. They have shown no mercy and asked for no quarter. We will give them the same." She paused, looking at the approaching wall of black ships. "The enemy believes we are just another group of soft prey to be consumed. They are about to learn otherwise. Remember your training. Trust your equipment. Protect your shipmates. And show these monsters what happens when they threaten humanity's allies." The Admiral took a deep breath. "All ships battle speed. Engage the enemy." The human fleet surged forward like a pack of wolves charging their prey. Instead of hanging back and fighting at long range like the Confederation forces had done, the humans accelerated directly toward the Reaper formation. The enemy response was immediate. Beams of purple energy lanced out from the black ships, striking the leading human vessels. The destroyer UES Defiant took a direct hit that would have vaporized any Confederation ship. Instead, its armor held and it kept coming. Entering weapons range, Lieutenant Commander Singh reported. All batteries. Open fire, Admiral Chen ordered. The space between the fleets exploded with light as hundreds of human weapons fired simultaneously. Nuclear torpedoes streaked toward the enemy ships while laser batteries and particle cannons poured energy into the Reaper formation. The first human salvo struck the lead Reaper ships with devastating effect. Their shields flared and collapsed under the concentrated firepower. The humans had studied the battle recordings from previous Confederation defeats and learned exactly where to aim for maximum damage, but the Reapers were far from helpless. Their return fire was massive and precise, targeting the human ship's weapon systems and engines. The cruiser UES Thunderbolt disappeared in a ball of flame when a Reaper beam pierced its reactor. The destroyer UES Lightning lost its forward guns to a direct hit, but kept fighting with its remaining weapons. Damage report. Captain Tanaka called out as the Indomitable shook from multiple impacts. Forward armor down to 60%, Commander Park reported. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Repair teams responding. Weapons status, port battery offline. Starboard guns operating at full capacity. Torpedo tubes ready for second salvo. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display as the two fleets crashed together like waves breaking on rocks. Human ships that would have been considered destroyed by Confederation standards kept fighting with whatever weapons they had left. Crews that should have evacuated when their ships were crippled instead stayed at their posts and continued the battle. The UES Valiant was a perfect example. The heavy cruiser had lost its main engines and was drifting helplessly through the battle zone. Any sane crew would have abandoned ship. Instead, Captain Morrison used his ship's remaining maneuvering thrusters to ram a Reaper vessel, detonating both ships in a massive explosion. "Ma'am," the communications officer called out. Captain Morrison transmitted for Earth and humanity just before impact. Admiral Chen felt a cold pride wash over her. This was what humans did when everything was on the line. They didn't retreat or surrender. They found ways to keep fighting even when their situation was hopeless. Colonel Harrison's voice crackled over the communication system from his assault transport. "Admiral, I'm seeing hull breaches on multiple enemy ships. Requesting permission to begin boarding operations." "Permission granted," Admiral Chen replied. "Take as many as you can." What followed was the most terrifying display of human warfare the galaxy had ever witnessed. Assault transports loaded with Marines punched through the enemy formation and locked onto damaged Reaper ships. The Marines cut through the enemy hulls with plasma torches and explosive charges, then poured into the alien vessels like a flood of armored death. The fighting inside the Reaper ships was brutal and personal. The enemy turned out to be insect-like creatures with razor-sharp claws and acidic blood. They were perfectly adapted for close combat in the twisting corridors of their ships, but they had never faced anything like human Marines. Sergeant Maria Santos led her squad through the corridors of a Reaper command ship, fighting room by room toward the bridge. When her plasma rifle ran out of ammunition, she switched to her sidearm. When that was empty, she drew her combat knife and kept advancing. "Contacts ahead," reported Corporal Jackson, scanning the corridor with his motion detector. "At least 20 hostiles. Standard breach and clear," Santos ordered. "Grenades first, then assault. Watch for acid splash." The Marines threw explosive grenades around the corner, then charged through the smoke and debris. The Reapers were waiting for them, but they had made the mistake of fighting humans in close quarters. Within minutes, every enemy in the corridor was dead. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Chen was making decisions that no Confederation leader would ever consider. When the Reaper flagship tried to withdraw from the battle, she ordered all remaining ships to pursue it regardless of their damage. "Admiral," Captain Tanaka said, "the flagship is calling for a general retreat. We've lost 30% of our ships." "Negative," Admiral Chen replied firmly. "We press the attack. Signal all vessels to maintain pursuit. I want that flagship destroyed." The chase continued for another hour as human ships with failing engines and damaged weapon systems hunted the retreating Reapers. The destroyer UES Shark, operating on battery power after losing its main reactor, managed to catch a fleeing enemy cruiser and ram it with its reinforced bow. When the battle finally ended, the space around Kepler's Rest was filled with debris from both fleets. Of the 60 Reaper ships that had entered the system, only 12 had escaped. The human fleet had lost 43 vessels, but the survivors were already organizing rescue operations and preparing for the next engagement. Elder Kethmira arrived at the battle site 3 days later with a Confederation medical fleet. What she found changed her understanding of warfare forever. Human crews were still alive and fighting on ships that should have been completely destroyed. Marines were setting up defensive positions in the wreckage of enemy vessels. Damaged human ships were being repaired in space using spare parts torn from captured Reaper technology. How? She asked Admiral Chen during their meeting aboard the damaged Indomitable. How did you win against such overwhelming odds? Admiral Chen gestured toward the viewport, where human work crews were cutting useful sections from destroyed Reaper ships. We didn't just fight them, Elder, we learned from them. Every weapon they used, every tactic they employed, we studied and adapted. By the end of the battle, we knew how to hurt them. But the losses, Kethmira whispered. So many of your people died. Yes, Admiral Chen agreed, but they died winning, and their sacrifice saved 3 billion lives on Kepler's rest. The Admiral turned back to her tactical displays, already planning the next engagement. The survivors are retreating toward their base of operations. We're going to follow them and finish this war. For the first time since the Reapers had appeared, Elder Kethmira felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. 6 months later, the war was over. The last Void Reaper stronghold had been destroyed in a battle that lasted 3 weeks and cost the human fleet another 60 ships. The survivors of the enemy force had been hunted down across 12 star systems and eliminated one by one. The species that had threatened to consume the entire galaxy was extinct, but victory had come with a price that no one had fully understood. When the fighting began, Elder Kethmira stood in the rebuilt council chamber on Serenitas Prime, waiting for the human delegation to arrive for the formal peace ceremony. The room looked the same as it had before the war, with its crystal dome showing the stars above and floating chairs for representatives from hundreds of worlds. But everything else had changed. The aliens who filled those chairs were different now. They had seen recordings of human warfare, watched their saviors fight with a brutality that made them sick with fear. They knew that their peaceful galaxy was no longer peaceful. The predators now ruled the stars, even if those predators called themselves protectors. And the humans themselves had changed too. Admiral Chen entered the chamber wearing a new uniform, dark blue with silver decorations that marked victories won and enemies destroyed. Her face bore fresh scars from the final battle at the Reaper homeworld, and her eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had ordered the complete extinction of an entire species. Behind her walked the other human leaders who had survived the war. Captain Tanaka now had cybernetic replacements for both arms and one leg, her body more machine than flesh after the brutal fighting on the Reaper command ships. Colonel Harrison looked older, his hair gone gray from the stress of leading Marines through battles that should have killed them all. But it was their presence that truly frightened the aliens. These humans moved through the chamber like apex predators in a garden full of prey animals. They didn't threaten anyone directly, but every alien in the room was aware that they could kill everyone present without breaking a sweat. The Galactic Confederation owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid, Elder Kethmira began, her voice carefully controlled despite her fear. Your sacrifice has saved countless worlds and countless lives. The galaxy is in your debt. She paused, struggling with words that had to be said but which no one wanted to hear spoken aloud. But we must also acknowledge that the galaxy has changed. The war has transformed all of us in ways we are still learning to understand. Admiral Chen nodded politely. The human race has no territorial ambitions beyond our current borders. Elder, we fought this war to preserve life in the galaxy, not to conquer it. This should have been reassuring, but somehow it wasn't. Every alien in the chamber understood that Admiral Chen was being diplomatic. The truth was that if humanity ever decided to expand beyond the Sol system, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The Confederation fleet had been rebuilt since the war, but everyone knew it was a joke. Their beautiful ships with their artistic curves and non-lethal weapons were toys compared to the human warships that still patrolled the outer systems, hunting down the last traces of Reaper technology. We have prepared a formal treaty recognizing Earth's contribution to galactic security, Ambassador Zelen said, his whale-like voice trembling slightly. The Terran Protectorate Agreement grants humanity certain rights and responsibilities, including the right to maintain military forces Anywhere in the galaxy where threats to galactic security might emerge, Admiral Chen finished. Yes, I've reviewed the terms. They're acceptable. Representative Fila's flower-like petals closed nervously. Admiral, we must ask about your long-term intentions. The human fleet is now the dominant military force in the galaxy. How can we be certain that you won't use that power to what? Colonel Harrison asked, his voice a low rumble that made several aliens flinch. To do what the Reapers were doing? To conquer and consume? We have to consider all possibilities. Representative Fila replied weakly. Admiral Chen stepped forward and her presence seemed to fill the entire chamber. Let me be clear about something. Humanity didn't ask to become the galaxy's protector. We were happy to stay in our own system and mind our own business. You came to us, remember? You begged us for help. Her voice remained calm and professional, but there was steel underneath. Now you're worried that we're too powerful? That we might become a threat? You're right to be worried. We are a threat. We're a threat to anyone who tries to destroy peaceful civilizations. We're a threat to anyone who thinks they can prey on the weak. She gestured toward the star map that showed the galaxy, now free of Reaper presence, but marked with the locations of human military bases. You wanted protection from monsters. We gave you that protection. But protection comes with a price. The price is that someone has to be strong enough to fight the monsters when they appear. Elder Kethmira found herself nodding despite her fear. The Admiral was right, of course. The galaxy needed protectors, and the Confederation had proven that they couldn't protect themselves. They had needed killers to fight killers, predators to hunt predators. What guarantees do we have? Asked Ambassador Zelen. How do we know that humanity won't decide we're a threat someday? Captain Tanaka spoke for the first time, her cybernetic voice carrying an electronic undertone. You don't have any guarantees. That's the nature of power. The strong protect the weak as long as it suits them to do so. This brutal honesty sent a ripple of fear through the assembled aliens. Several representatives actually left their chairs and moved toward the exits, but Admiral Chen held up her hand. Captain Tanaka is correct, but incomplete. You're asking the wrong question. You shouldn't be asking what guarantees you have. You should be asking why we choose to protect you. She walked to the center of the chamber, directly under the crystal dome. Above her, the stars shone with the light of 1 trillion worlds that were still alive, because humans had fought and died to protect them. We protect you because that's who we are, Admiral Chen said simply. Earth is a dangerous world that breeds dangerous people, but it also breeds people who protect those who can't protect themselves. We fight bullies. We hunt predators. We stand between the darkness and the light. She turned to face Elder Kethmira directly. You're right to be afraid of us. Any intelligent species should fear predators. But you should be more afraid of what would happen if we weren't here the next time something like the Reapers appears. The chamber fell silent as everyone absorbed this truth. The galaxy was safer now, but that safety depended entirely on the goodwill of the most dangerous species in known space. It was a balance that could shift at any moment, and everyone present understood that. Elder Kethmira signed the Terran Protectorate Agreement with hands that shook only slightly. As she did, she was aware that she was signing away something that could never be recovered, the Confederation's independence. From this moment forward, the galaxy would have human guardians watching over it. Those guardians would protect the weak and hunt the predators, but they would also make the ultimate decisions about war and peace, about who lived and who died. As the ceremony concluded and the humans prepared to return to their ships, Elder Kethmira approached Admiral Chen one last time. Admiral, she said quietly, was there no other way? Could we not have found a solution that didn't require this? Admiral Chen looked out through the crystal dome at the stars, where human warships patrolled the space lanes and human marines stood guard on 100 worlds. Maybe, she admitted, but the universe doesn't care about what might have been. It only cares about what is. And what is, Elder, is that your peaceful galaxy needed warriors to survive. You asked for our help and we gave you everything we had. She turned back to the alien leader, her scarred face showing no regret. We saved your civilization. The cost was that we became your rulers. Whether that was a fair trade or not, history will decide. As the human delegation left the chamber, Elder Kethmira remained alone under the dome of stars. In her final report on the war, she wrote, We asked the Deathworlders for help and they gave us everything we needed to survive. The cost was learning that we are no longer the masters of our own fate. Perhaps that is a fair trade for existence itself. Perhaps not. Time will tell if we saved our civilization or simply chose a more benevolent form of conquest. The galaxy was safe. Whether it was free was a question that would haunt the stars for generations to come. But the lights of 1 trillion worlds still shone in the darkness, and somewhere among them, human ships kept their eternal watch against the things that prowled in the void between galaxies. The universe had learned a new truth. Sometimes, to preserve peace, you needed people who were very, very good at war.